Before I dive in, I actually wanted to talk about the fact that in the previous video, just telling you, oh, I visited this and some surface level ideas of what I miss most isn't gonna cut it. This is not a surface level travel vlog channel or a hey guys, here it's me with my thesis and whatever. No. In the very first video, I deliberately chose to talk about one of the hardest moments in my life, the loss of my father, to inspire you, whoever is watching this. I will share my experiences and tell you, to the best of my abilities, how I felt and feel, because I guess it is too easy or easier to let others peer inside you than letting yourself peer into yourself. Peering into your own, it's scary, because you might find out that there isn't anything there to begin with. I don't even know how to properly start this. I remember being there in that small hotel room and smiling because it was for the first time that I saw gray hair and gray and white hair in my beard. I thought, well, I guess I'm no longer a kid, eh? It didn't feel, and it still doesn't feel like it. Weirdly enough, I feel like nothing has changed, but yeah, we should be honest with ourselves here because everything's changed. I feel hopeful and happy and anxious because of time and time passing. A bit sad as well. Why sad? Well, maybe because I am living in a perpetual transition, I guess. A liminality of the mind. My former self is slowly being replaced with this other self, this person that I barely recognize. Is this because of time or simply because I know that I will live there? It feels like the blueprints of my life have been redesigned and reshaped and rewritten, but the architect is not myself, it's the space that I will inhabit. And paradoxically enough, I simultaneously hold with all of my strength the very space and the one space that will forever be me. Home. I feel alive and liberated, yet it's still scary. But the thrill gives me focus and a clearer head. I confronted the real and it smiled back at me. Last video I have talked about how I celebrated obtaining my PhD with 2 trips to Japan, and I told you a little about what I did while being there, and I haven't really mentioned how I felt walking those streets, how I felt being a solo traveler in Japan, and I mean not necessarily to Japan, but to a foreign country for almost 2 months. And it all boils down to aesthetic. The cyberpunk aesthetic isn't a symptom of capitalist alienation. I perhaps might have pointed out that idea in my Neuromancer article. It is also generally seductive. It's not just a symptom, right? It is seductive for good reason. I believe that for someone coming out of grief, coming out of burnout, maybe depression, the fantasy of a world where technology promises total autonomy feels like oxygen. It's a fetishization and a fetish. It isn't a delusion. It's a response to a real need. I needed to feel like an agent in my own life again. In Tokyo or in Night City. Or be it the Night City of Cyberpunk 2077 or the Night City of William Gibson. That feeling was given to me both spatially and aesthetically, and almost physically. Yes, the system is exploitative. I would never say it isn't. And yes, it does manufacture loneliness. But it also offers relief that is real and understandable. I wasn't just treating myself to a trip. I was emerging from years of sustained intellectual and emotional pressure, stepping into a space that aesthetically performs exactly the kind of autonomy and forward momentum I'd be needing and I'd be working toward. It was a celebration of life, a rediscovery of it. So while I'm using the aesthetic of cyberpunk or the cyberpunk genre, or of Japan, to frame this into some resemblance of structure, the video is less about that, but more about what we reach for when we're finally allowed to breathe again, after being constantly choked out by none other than ourselves. Walking through Shibuya, Shinjuku, or Dotonbori, Akihabara, I remember looking up at the kanji signs and the lights and feeling like I was being pushed into a very comfortable bed, warm, heavy, enveloping. But what followed wasn't rest, it was closer to a coma. The lights burned my retina. I wasn't drowning in clear water, I was sinking into a swamp. Slowly, without panic, almost willingly. It felt like the first drag of a cigarette, the taste of ash, and already wanting another. A body surrounded by infinite choice, paralyzed by all of it. And yet, I didn't want to leave. That's the thing about these spaces. They're not designed to satisfy you, they're designed to keep you suspended in the moment just before satisfaction, perpetually at the edge of it. And for someone who had spent years under the weight of grief and pressure and expectation, that suspension felt like freedom because nothing was asked of me. The city didn't need me to be anything, it just needed me to look up. There is something uncanny about cyberspace. It blurs the line between what is alien and what is familiar in a way nothing before has managed. The cyborg, that old cyberpunk obsession, transforms flesh into metal, breaks the boundary between body and machine, but it's still material, still something you can touch. Cyberspace dissolves that entirely. It becomes abstract, immaterial, a space that exists nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. And slowly, without us really noticing, it replaced something enormous. It replaced God. Not in the dramatic philosophical sense, but in the practical, daily, banal, and almost embarrassingly human sense. For example, I recently had a publisher agree to send my monograph to peer review, and if you know a bit about publishing, means that they are interested in the material. And my first instinct was not to celebrate, it was to ask an AI what my chances were of actually getting published. When I need reassurance, I don't pray, I have no faith, but I clearly require a surrogate for it. I suspect I am not alone in that. The internet didn't just replace our spaces, it replaced our capacity to simply believe that things might just be alright. And I know this because I lived it twice. The first time I went to Japan, I was still a PhD student. June, July 2025, a month in Tokyo, Yokohama, Osaka, Kamakura, Mount Fuji, all of that. It was an escape. Thing is, you cannot really escape what you carry inside of you by just boarding a plane. I ended up working anyway, conditioned, and that conditioning didn't dissolve because, you just go somewhere. I was programmed for sustained intellectual pressure, and even when I put the work down, I felt guilty for putting it down. I had lost the capacity to simply believe that rest is allowed, that I was allowed to rest. The city was doing everything it could, right? The lights, the noise, the beautiful, overwhelming foreignness of it. And I was sitting in a hotel room with a laptop. I was there and I wasn't there. Am I writing this because I'm still programmed to do so, or because the desire to create to think, to research, doesn't come from pressure, but from love. Am I making this YouTube channel because I am still on autopilot? The second time was different. I had become a doctor in February. Late March, I went back to Osaka, Kyoto, Kobe, Nara, and this time nothing was asking me to produce anything. So when I got lost in Fushimi Inari, took the wrong path up, went completely off trail, I didn't panic. I met two Americans who were just as lost as I was, and we laughed about it. A mistake that felt like a gift. Because somewhere between the first trip and the second one, I had learned something small and enormous at the same time. That getting lost is not a failure. That not knowing where you're going is sometimes exactly where you need to be. Liminality is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I think very few people actually live it the way I do right now. I'm planning to move to Japan, and that changes everything about how you exist in the present tense. I am not fully there, but I'm not fully here. Romania is home, and Japan is also home, and neither is completely either. There is a Japanese restaurant in Constanza run by a Japanese chef, a Japanese waitress, and they speak Romanian with a Japanese accent. I go there, it's one of my favorite restaurants. I order ramen and a Sapporo, and for a moment I'm a tourist again, except this time, instead of me butchering their language, they're butchering mine. It is static and dynamic simultaneously. Exciting because I know I will be there. Comforting because the moment I walk out the door, I am back home. I am suspended between two lives, two aesthetics, two versions of myself. And this, I think, is why the cyberpunk genre has always felt so personally resonant to me. Because cyberpunk doesn't resolve its tensions either. It is not fully science fiction and not fully the present. Its world is too technologically transformed to be ours and too human to be alien. The cyberware blurs the line between flesh and machine. The hyperreality of cyberspace dissolves the material altogether. That exact feeling of loneliness that people often describe with this genre stems from the feeling of loneliness of transition. James Fallon, a recognized professor for his work in narratology, rhetoric, and literary criticism, begins his work experiencing fiction by emphasizing that narratives are not merely texts to be interpreted, but experiences to be lived through temporally and ethically. He writes, narrative form, in turn, is experienced through the temporal process of reading and responding to narrative. From Fallon's perspective, the audience is encouraged to make interpretive, ethical, and aesthetic judgments throughout the reading experience. As he argues, readers make three main types of narrative judgment: interpretive judgments about the nature of actions, aesthetic judgments about the artistic quality of the narrative of its parts. In the same way, this also applies to spaces. Play Cyberpunk 2077, or better yet, watch me play it. Look at me direct what the city looks like. And remember what I told you about cyberspaces? Yeah, you are watching a simulated sci-fi version of Tokyo while you listen to how the real thing felt. It will probably leave your mind a bit blank, but don't worry, because I felt the exact same way and I was there. I looked up and felt freedom, but also the lights turned into a white-black canvas. And I constantly go back to watching videos or playing this game because I crave it. Maybe I should just visit Chongqing next. Thank you guys for watching that. Yeah, I'll see you next week, or probably in 2 weeks time with another video. Probably in the similar style as it was this one. It was actually really fun to do. And yeah, I'll see you around. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video if you can, and yeah, help me a lot. Alright, I'll see you around. Bye bye.